So if some little snowflake says, I got called the F word on Call of Duty, that's extremist and terrorist recruitment, they're going to say, oh, that's one tick. This person experienced hateful rhetoric.
You've been doing some really good work over on X. And I want you to talk about this, the Extremism and Gaming Research Network. What the fuck is this?
Oh boy, where do I begin? So this whole thing started for me because on the Take This website, they occasionally state, as from my 3-minute video, that they are funded by DHS, but they don't really expound on that except for one post from 2022, I think it was, where they actually talk a little bit about it. But otherwise, throughout their website, they just sprinkle that they're funded by DHS to try to uplift their claims and their work. So I ended up going really hard on this. I called DHS. I figured out how to look up all the grant stuff on there because I've never actually used DHS's system, and it's really easy. And so for the longest time, I thought I was doing something wrong. Well, it turns out Take This partnered up with Middlebury College and Logically AI to attempt to do research into extremist and gaming, or extremism in gaming, right? And through Dr. Cowart, I found the EGRN because she's a part of that. Now, the EGRN was founded, and I only recently found that information, but it was founded by RUSI, which is the Royal United Services Institute. And basically, they are a think tank that has been around for a really long time. And so they focus on defense, international news, things like that, like things that are important. Not everything connected to this is bad, but people have joined these organizations to try to push their own agendas. So RUSI created the EGRN. Along with Love Frankie, I think. It's not really clear. And it is a collection of people from various different organizations that have been studying far-right extremism or gender studies or other forms of sociology that are all through a gender-critical lens. And it is made up of people and organizations that strictly focus on that right-wing extremism around the world. And they are connected to various organizations and governments, the ADL, and I have now officially tied them to the WEF through RUSI. What they fail to mention at any point is how hyper-connected all of this is. So the way that government funding works, these people think that they're being propped up by the government, but in truth, the government just wants to be able to regulate and monitor as much as they can. DHS is literally known for throwing money at things that do not matter in the slightest. So when they submitted their research grant request through the college, not only did that make it look more desirable to DHS, but they threw in all the buzzwords of extremism, of terrorist engagement, and things like that. But none of these people actually even they have no work. The people who actually work for the EGRN, the people who have put out articles, I've read a lot of them, they acknowledge that there's nothing to support this claim. But when they submit the grants, they make it sound like an ongoing problem, which that right there is red flag number one to me. So these people are, I believe, let me see, where there's one of them that I do a pretty good breakdown of the salaries. I think it was for somebody else who's connected to Take This. I've written about so many of them, so I get them jumbled. But basically, the head guy is paying himself $60,000 from a $700,000 grant each year for 2 years. So he's getting a total of $120-something thousand, right? And so they're that's NASEF, N-A-S-E-F. They are an esports organization through the government. Or not through the government. They're a scholastics esports thing, and they basically try to get people into esports as a career, right? So they talk to middle schoolers and high schoolers. But this guy, in their grant submission, the funding, this is how you know it's all a grift. They only want to separate out $20,000 for scholarships and to actually give to the students over 2 years. But he's going to pay himself $60,000 a year.
Wow.
On top of the salary he receives, on top of the other work that he does.
Wow.
So that's what these people are doing. They're getting government grants.
Now, you detail a couple other companies here. This Love Frankie company. Who is this? Who is this Love Frankie company? Why
So
are they on?
Love Frankie is one of the institutional members for the EGRN, and the guy who I guess helped co-found or co-convene. I don't know what a lot of these words kind of mean in that regard, because I think they're trying to be sneaky in the way that they do this. But their advisor is the same guy who is the co-convener. I really try to avoid names because I don't want to pronounce them because I'm really bad at it. But where's the picture of it? Because I'm not going to be able to say it without reading it. That's good, but where's the Love Frankie one? Here it is. I'm sorry. Here it is. Here it is. So it's the co-convener Galen Lamphir England, and I'm so sorry that I butchered the names. I don't know if it's right, but so he is the co-convener of the EGRN, but he is also the Russie employee. He works for Russie. He founded basically the EGRN, and he's listed as Love Frankie's senior strategic communications advisor.
Okay, and then we
this
also
is a very busy man.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have the Canadian Institute for Far Right Studies. By the way, I Googled Canadian Institute for Far Right Studies to see if it existed, and it did. And then I Googled Canadian Institute for Far Left Studies, and wouldn't you know it, there wasn't one. It's amazing.
Yeah, theirs is really, really interesting. I think theirs was the one that had, if I go and look at, that's the Tech Against Terrorism one. They're the ones who kind of focused on the racism and violence on and offline, but they also talked a lot about the Freedom Convoy, and a lot of what they were saying was the same talking points that other leftist media would say, and it doesn't look like they actually really reached out to anybody from it. Oh, here it is. Under research, they state that their focus is on white supremacy, ethno-nationalism, male supremacy, religion, which they state is often incorporated into far-right extremist doctrine as a justification of beliefs.
So these are the people who are in charge of the figuring out who are extremists in video games, and specifically this is Canada, correct?
Yeah. This is all for Canada. They are a think tank, and they do contribute in some manner to government and policy, and they do have access to Canadian policymakers. So so the policymakers right now obviously want to be able to control and silence the right wing isms,
right?
And organizations like this, whether it's true or not, the government is going to latch on to it because it just props up the government to be able to say, oh, these people claim to have found this stuff, so we're going to go ahead and make a bunch of laws around it. It's not the other way around. Like these people think that they are important, and they're really not. The government is using them because the government just wants to control them. And at some point, there's not going to be any more far right that they can explore, and they're going to come for the left. That's just what they do.
By the way, I think it's extremely interesting when you look at the About Us of the Canadian Institute for Far Right Studies. As you scroll down, just see how many white women there are in comparison, and just white people there are in comparison, and not a whole lot of diversity here. Just
I'd like to point out, as the DEI representative here, those are not white women's. They are she, theys, they, them, he, them, theys.
Point taken,
How dare you?
I will not live in their imaginary world. So what is could you see a situation where the Extremism and Gaming Research Network leverages the government to, I don't know, go after Mark the Cyborg, our favorite Canadian autistic gamer, who may say something about frame rates that is not acceptable, and then all of a sudden he's in jail? Is this something that
what they are going to do? So their research is to ultimately prove, to come back to the government, because the only way that they can keep getting funding, because they're obviously good, if Canada's going to give them $300,000 this year, imagine what they can get next year based off of their results. That's how that works. You get more funding if you bring them proved results. So they will take, say, segments of this YouTube podcast. They'll take segments of other YouTubers and say,
Hey, Justin.
look, these people are extremists. Look at this hateful rhetoric. They are going like, this is my other favorite thing. They use self-reporting through Twitter and Google Forms to collect this information. So if some little snowflake says, I got called the F word on Call of Duty, that's extremist and terrorist recruitment, they're going to say, oh, that's one tick. This person experienced hateful rhetoric. That's a tick. They're not going to explain it. They're not going to expound on it. They're not going to go and detail it. They're not going to log it. They're just going to say, here's all the hate we found. Give us more money so that way we can keep doing this. So yeah. And then because the government's going to say, okay, we need to make laws around this. And that's what they're already doing. There is a connection between this and the recent language of, I don't know if it was passed or proposed, but basically Canada can jail you for your hate speech online, I guess now.
Thank goodness I don't live in Canada.
God.
I am unfortunately up there a lot. I'm half Canadian. And look, driving on the QEW, just saying, I could get arrested for the words of which I say.
Wow.
I'm just kidding. But
just the fact that there is an extremism in gaming research network. You know, we've talked about this many times. You can manipulate data to say whatever you want it to say.
Yeah.
And you're right with it, Savvy. You know, they're going to bring back all sorts of stuff. Well, maybe we'll get $500,000. Maybe I'll pay myself $80,000 a year next year, as opposed to 60. You know, or maybe I'll just pump it up to 100, and maybe we'll allocate $10,000 next year for whatever it is that the actual reason for it. That's just it's so corrupt, so corrupt. And I appreciate you shining a light on this nonsense. Absolutely crazy. Absolutely.
And I'm sorry I'm a little scattered when I talk about it. It just really is a lot. That's why I have a schizo board. I actually need to make an updated video on it because I've added more to it.
Wow.
And Dr. Cowart is at the heart of a lot of this because she's even independently listed on the Russie website, which she fails to mention anywhere else so far that I've seen. Her own website words things very carefully. Because the language that they use is specific. They're still trying to tout the line of look how important I am, while also still not necessarily trying to be too obvious about what they're really doing. And this is just a fact of government spending and this kind of useless area of studies. In college, we make fun of people like that. Like nobody in science, in actual science, takes the gender study crew seriously.
Right. Yeah.
We all made fun of them, especially the poli-sci people and the gender studies, the critical feminist classes, all that stuff. We scoffed at it because it's not legitimate. If they really cared about societal issues, you would talk about it in totality, and you would talk about the mental health of the people who do say hateful things, who take it too far, who don't know the difference between reality and fiction. The work started on the foundations, I believe, of something good, and it turned into what an actual grift is. Because again, the government will literally fund the most useless stuff in the world if it means they get a chance to monitor somebody.
Well, here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are. In the process of it, man. And once again, that's why it's so stupid that a show like this has to exist, and we have to point at all this stupidity and point it out to people, because I guarantee the vast majority of the people here didn't necessarily know about the this ridiculous idea of the Extremism and Gaming Research Network before tuning in to Side Scrollers today. So Savvy, thank you for your hard work and finding that. Great
Thousands
stuff.
of pages I've read.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not even kidding at this point. I read all of the things these people write because I believe in being fair. That's what my degree program taught me. And that's how you understand someone. You have to have a conversation with them to understand why they're doing this.